Welcome back. Today we're going to go over Chapter 3, Orthographic Projections. We're going to deviate slightly from the textbook. We are going to use the assignments from the back of Chapter 3. Instead of hand sketching, as the author suggests, we're going to turn these assignments or problems into an AutoCAD assignment. Okay, so we're going to be using AutoCAD. Most likely, most of you downloaded AutoCAD 2021. If you're using an older version, it's okay. And if you're on campus using the computers in the computer lab, we're going to be using AutoCAD 2019 English. We have about at least 5 or 6 different versions of AutoCAD on campus. We have AutoCAD for architecture, for electrical, for plumbing, and others. So make sure when you come on campus, those of you that do show up to the computer lab, to click on AutoCAD 2019 English to load AutoCAD. Okay, and just a reminder, there's no due date on the assignments. You can turn them in as you go, or you can wait till the end of the semester, or you can wait at the end of the chapter to submit all your assignments. About half of the class will turn them in as they go. If they complete 3 assignments in one session, they'll email those assignments to me. All right, so let's move on. Next slide. Okay, so something you will find in your textbook are the alphabet of lines, or the alphabet of lines. You can also just Google this or go on YouTube and do a search on alphabet of lines. So we need to use a standard when it comes to what lines are we going to use, and later on we'll talk more about the American National Standards and also the Mechanical Engineering Standards and the International Standards Organization. Okay, so these organizations come up with rules of how we create drawings. So for the edges of the part, we're going to be using visible object lines. For the areas that we cannot see, when we use our X-ray vision, we're going to be using dashed lines for hidden lines. And to mark the center of a hole or the axis of a hole, we're going to be using center lines. And these are the line thicknesses that we're going to be using. Also in your textbook, the author suggests for object lines to use about 0.50 millimeters to 0.60 millimeters in thickness, also referred to as the line weight. For visible and hidden lines, we go with a thinner line, around 0.30 or 0.35 thickness for center and hidden lines. And later on, we'll talk about the other types of lines in a later chapter. Okay, so far we've been creating isometric views, right? So we're not going to be creating isometric views in this chapter, nor for this class, but I will provide an extra credit assignment later on for creating isometric views in AutoCAD. All right, so you're just going to be drawing 3 views in this chapter. Some of the problems will have more than 3 views, but most of the problems will just have 3 views, a front view, right? Think of Jack's mugshot, front view, top view, side view. We're not going to draw the isometric view. Okay, so when we talked about isometric views in the previous chapter, we said imagine putting the isometric view in a glass box, right? Or a cardboard box. So first you draw a box and then you start sketching the part. Just makes it easier. You draw a box with the height, length, and depth, right? You start with the simple box and then you start drawing the object lines. Okay, so once again, these are the object lines. These are around 0.50 or 0.60 millimeters in thickness. And again, your textbook will give you a range of what thickness to use on the lines. For center lines, anytime you see a semicircle or a full circle, you want to use center lines. So center lines, you can see it's large dash, little dash, large dash, little dash, okay? And for hidden lines, so when you can't see something, for example, here we have this opening that goes all the way through, but if you're floating over the top, we can see this opening. we're going to represent it with hidden lines if we're flying over the top. All right, so in this case, the front view is the view over here. If you're standing over here, you can think of you're standing next to a building. So this is the front view. If you're standing on this side of the building, if you come around, this is the right side view. Come back to the front and fly over the top, and this will be the top view. All right, so we're gonna follow the same process for AutoCAD, just like the views lined up. So in chapter 1, we sketched our 3 views. Everything has to line up, right? So when we create our front, top, and side view, we're going to do something similar as the isometric view. For the isometric view, we created a box. For our front, top, and side views, we're going to use rectangles. So we start with rectangles. We go with the length and the height. In this case, we go with the height and the depth. For this one, we go with the length and the depth. Okay, so we start with boxes, rectangular boxes, or I should say rectangular shapes, before we start drawing all the details. All right, so I'm going to set up the AutoCAD file for you. And you're going to see what's referred to as construction lines. Here I'm showing them as red. In the AutoCAD file, I'm going to use a different, I think I'm going to use magenta for our construction lines. Construction lines are temporary lines to guide you along to create the drawing. Okay, so we're going to be creating a box for the, or I should say a rectangle for the front view, top view, and side view. So for the first few chapters in AutoCAD, I'm going to be creating this for you. Eventually, you'll be creating your own construction lines. Okay, so to guarantee that everything lines up, we draw our rectangles. And to make sure that everything lines up, I use a 45-degree angle, and you're going to be creating your own eventually, the second half of the semester. So we want to make sure that the top view also lines up with the side view. So we're going to use a 45-degree angle line, 45 from the horizontal, and we're going to project from the front to the 45 and come straight down. Or vice versa, we can go from the side view. So for this left edge, on the right side view, we project up, hit the 45 and come across. And that'll give us this side of the top view. Okay, so just like the front lines up with the top, front lines up with the side will also line up with the top. Okay, so again, these are problems from your textbook. So if you go to your textbook, end of chapter 3, or in the back of chapter 3, if you look for example problem 317, so this is one of the problems we'll be seeing in your assignment for this class session. Okay, so the textbook will tell you, hey, take the isometric view. By the way, the textbook doesn't show dimensions. I added the dimensions, the measurements. So they'll ask you to take this isometric view, and from scratch, hand sketching, you are to create your front view from scratch, side view, and top view. But I decided to turn it into AutoCAD assignments. Okay, so these 3 views are currently incomplete. So I'm going to send you incomplete views in AutoCAD. So you'll have the 3 views, but there's going to be lines missing, center lines missing, hidden lines missing, and you are to complete the 3 views. Okay, so this is where we're going to deviate slightly from the textbook. We are going to use the problems from the textbook, but instead of hand sketching them from scratch, we are going to complete them in AutoCAD, and I will email you the AutoCAD files. All right, so these are the solutions. So not only am I going to send you the AutoCAD files, I will also send you the solutions so you can check your work before you submit your work. Okay, so here it is, the isometric view. We have the front view. So if you're standing here, this is the front view. Right side view. Come back to the front, fly over the top, and you'll get the top. So here it includes the center lines. So remember I mentioned anytime you see a circular hole or a semicircle, half circle, you're going to draw the center of that arc or circle. So we use these imaginary green center lines. And also this hole, you can see is represented by the hidden lines. Okay, so when we're standing here on the side, we cannot see this hole. So we represent it with dashed lines, hidden lines, and I chose red for the hidden lines. See how it lines up? And also from the center, we're going to draw an axis. So here the green center line represents the axis of the hole. And same thing for this view. Anytime you see a circle or a semicircle, automatically draw your center lines, and I chose green. Once again, here we have another semicircle. Locate the center. The reason we need to locate the center of a hole or semicircle is because a machinist, when they drill a hole, so when they drill this hole, they're going to aim for the center. Okay, so they need to know where the center is at. So it's important to dimension center to center, and we'll cover dimensioning measurements in a later chapter. We're still going to practice orthographic projections. All right, so and again, on this handout, go to the end of the handout, you'll have the solutions. And there's about, I think it's around 15 problems. So we're going to spend about a week and a half on this assignment. Okay, so don't feel that you have to complete all 15 problems in one sitting. So you're going to have a week and a half before we move on to the next chapter. Actually, it'll be chapter 3, part 2. So that'll be a different class session. All right, so and again, there's no due date, so don't feel pressure to complete all this in one sitting, all 15 problems. All right, so before we go to AutoCAD, let's talk about file extensions. So those of you that worked on your resume, for example, you create your resume using Word. So a Word document, when you save it, it saves it as a .doc file. So you'll see resume.doc, right? When you do an Excel file, so if you're doing a spreadsheet, let's say you're doing for example, I'm doing my grades, which I do on Excel. I'll have grades.xls. So when you save these files on your desktop or flash drive and you want to open them, when you click on it, so if I was to open up my resume.doc, the .doc, the extension, so these are the file extensions, it tells the computer to open up the document in Word. When I click on my grades.xls, the .xls extension tells the computer to open the file in Excel. Same thing with the PDF files, like this lecture. This is a PDF file that I'm showing you. Same thing with the assignment. So here's the assignment PDF file. When I save it as a .pdf file, right? And when you click on the lecture or handout, the .pdf tells the computer to open it in Acrobat. And so on. We have PowerPoint, PPT. AutoCAD uses the file extension name .dwg. Okay, so that'll tell the computer to open your AutoCAD file in AutoCAD. Okay, and then we also have CATIA on campus. That's a 3D software. It's mostly used in aerospace and automotive. For a CATIA drawing, the file extension name is .cat drawing. So it'll tell the computer to use the CATIA software to open the file. For SolidWorks, those of you that have used SolidWorks, the file extension is .prt, which stands for part. And that'll tell the computer to open it using SolidWorks. Okay, and later on we're going to be discussing .dxf files. You can take an AutoCAD file or any drawing and save it as a .dxf file. So that way you can open it in any 2D software. Also, if you're taking SolidWorks or Inventor and you save your files, but you want to email these files to somebody that doesn't have the same software as you, you can always save it instead of a SolidWorks.prt. You can save your file as a step file or .igs or igis file, so that someone with a different software can open your files. Okay, anytime your computer freezes on you or the software freezes on you, the software will save a backup file. So if you're working in CATIA, for example, and your computer freezes or the software freezes, instead of seeing .CAD drawing as your extension, it'll save it as a .BAK file. That's a backup file. So all you have to do is simply rename the extension back to the file extension you were using to restore that file. Now AutoCAD tends to save backup files. So if you're working on your AutoCAD drawing, it'll in the background, it'll save it, or I should say in your flash drive or wherever your file is located, it'll save a backup file just in case something goes wrong with your AutoCAD file. So you'll be seeing as you're saving your drawings as .dwg AutoCAD files, you'll see in that same folder creating a duplicate file labeled as .dbak, and it's just a backup file just in case something happens to your drawing in AutoCAD. It'll have that backup just in case. All right, so let's go to AutoCAD. Okay, so once you open up AutoCAD, it's going to look something like this, right? If you double click on the icon. So if you double click on AutoCAD, give it a few seconds to load. Here's what it looks like, right? So if you're starting a drawing from scratch, you can simply click on Start Drawing. So the second half of the semester, you will be creating your own drawings from scratch. If you want to open up some recent documents, here's a column of the last documents that I opened. All right, so your first assignment will be to complete problem 3-13. Okay, so it remembers I opened it recently, so I can go here, or I can simply go to File, Open. Okay, so let me show you on the PDF file how to open up an existing file. Okay, so once again, you can start from scratch, create a new file, or you can open up an existing file. So I'm going to email you all 15 AutoCAD files. They will be incomplete and you are to complete them. And then you'll be saving them. You can also save it with a different name. If you ever make a mistake, you can hit undo. By the way, this eraser, pencil eraser, number 2 pencil eraser, you can use to delete items. I'll demonstrate that later on. And also at the top, you'll see the name of the file you currently are looking at. Okay, another option to open up a drawing is to hit this AutoCAD icon. Okay, so the same options you see here on the bar, new file, open, save, save as, and so on. You can click on this icon and you can do it from here. Okay, you can start a new file, open an existing file. So these are my recent files that I've opened. And also you can save as with the new name. All right, so let's go to AutoCAD. Okay, so I'm going to open up your first problem for this class session, problem 3-13. And I'm just going to go open. I can open it from here. Or I can open it from here, right? So I'm going to go open. I'm going to open up a drawing, right? A .dwg drawing. So I'm going to open up a drawing. And here is my folder. Okay. If you don't see the AutoCAD files that I emailed you, you can always go to the drop down. You can go to your desktop. So if you saved it on your desktop, go to your desktop. If you saved it on your flash drive, go to your flash drive. Then you can go to desktop, or you can go browse through your documents. Okay, so I currently have it in my flash drive. Here are my chapter 3 AutoCAD assignment files. And I'm going to open up problem 3-13. Okay, so I'm going to open it. Okay, and there it is. And it's loaded. Okay, now Before you open up this file, let me show you how to unzip the folder. So I'm going to send you these 15 AutoCAD files in a zipped folder, compress it, just so it eats up less memory and it's easy to email one compressed file versus sending 15 AutoCAD files. Don't want to add 15 attachments. Okay, so when you download the AutoCAD files from Canvas or from your email, okay, I'm going to attach the handout, and I'm also going to attach the AutoCAD files as a zip folder. Notice there's a zipper, so it's compressed. And imagine you're traveling, you're in a hurry, and you're trying to push as much stuff as you can, your clothes, into a luggage bag, and you're trying to compress it and close the zipper, right? So same idea. This is to compress files, so it's easier to email. And I'm also going to load it on Canvas, and it eats up less memory. Okay, so I'm going to right click to unzip it. So right click on the file after you've downloaded it from Canvas or your email. You can save it on your desktop, flash drive, hard drive, wherever you like. Okay, then I'm going to extract all or unzip. Okay, so I'm going to extract all, and it's going to load somewhere here over to the left. So anytime you download a new file or create a new one, it typically goes towards the left of the screen of your desktop. Okay, so keep an eye on the left as I hit extract all. Okay, so it's gonna default to desktop because that's where I currently have the zip folder. You can always change location. If you want to put it on your flash drive, for example, you can go to browse. I'll just have it loaded here onto desktop and extract. Don't blink, extract, and you're gonna see it loaded here on the left. Okay, so here are the AutoCAD files. Don't open the AutoCAD files from the zipped folder because you may have trouble later on saving your work. Okay, so you want to go from the unzipped folder. So I'm going to double click on it. And it creates a duplicate folder. Let me double click again. And here are all the AutoCAD problems for this chapter. Okay, so once again, there's no due date. Notice this is a .dwg file, so we already have problem 3-13 open. So when you click on it, it tells, so if you don't have AutoCAD loaded, when you click on a .dwg file, it tells your computer to use AutoCAD or some type of Autodesk software to open it. All right. I'm also going to send you 3D models. Okay, that you can open up in eDrawings. So this is eDrawings. This is optional. Some of you have probably already downloaded eDrawings. We have eDrawings on our computers in our computer lab. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to extract all for the 3D models that are compressed, and you'll see it load here on the left. As I extract, it'll create a duplicate copy. There it is. Okay, so this folder will contain 3D models. So let's see if I double click, open that folder. And these are .3D XML files. So even though I modeled these files in a CATIA, I saved it as .3D XML files. So you can open it in different 3D softwares. Let's see if I can go to view and show them as large icons. See if it gives me a preview. Oh, doesn't give me, I was hoping it would give me a preview of the 3D models, but it doesn't. Let me go back to details. All right, so if you were to double click on one of these files, your computer may not know what software to use, even though it has a file extension .3dxml. Different softwares can open up these files, so it will not know to open it in eDrawings. Okay, so I'll show you how to open up the first problem, 3-13, using eDrawings. Okay, so I've already opened eDrawings. So here's eDrawings. Okay, so to open up that 3D XML file for the first problem, I'm going to go File, Open. And I can go to the desktop or flash drive. So I have a copy of these .3dxml files on my flash drive. But let me go to the desktop since I unzipped the one on the desktop, and I'm pretty sure most of you are probably going to have it on your desktop. Okay, so going to my desktop, and there's the .3D XML files. Double click again, and here is my first problem, 3-13. So I click on it and open, and eDrawings will translate the data into something that we can understand. Okay, so I'm going to hit open and give it a few seconds. Open. Let me refresh this. Okay, so here we go. So there's our first problem. Okay, so I can go, hey, I want to see front view. I want to see side view. I want to see top view, right? And so on. Hey, I want to go back to isometric view. Okay, so the reason I'm sending you these 3D models is to help you visualize your front, top, and side view, and maybe any additional views that you have to create. So again, this software is optional. You do not have to use eDrawings for this class. It's an optional software. All right, so let me go ahead and move it over to the right. Move my folder over to the left. Okay, another way to open up a file is to drag and drop. So I'm going to left mouse click on the second problem and drag and drop. And there's the second problem. Okay. All right. So, and I can go between tabs. All right. So let's go back to the lecture. All right. So now that you know how to open up a file, whether it's AutoCAD or eDrawings. Let's go back to AutoCAD. Okay, so another way to open it is also to drag and drop. So if I was ready to work on the second problem, let me go ahead and move this over. Let me go back to my folder. Okay, so if I go back to my desktop where I also have my AutoCAD files. Okay, I'm going to go to desktop. Here's the unzipped AutoCAD folder. You do not want to open your files for AutoCAD from the zipped folder. Don't open the one with the zipper. Open the one without the zipper, the uncompressed one. Okay, double click again. Okay, so we already have the first problem open, problem 3-13. Let's go ahead and drag and drop the next problem. Oh, in this case, it's not going to work. It's going to create a copy. Okay, so here AutoCAD thinks I'm trying to copy problem 3-15 into 3-13, so it didn't work. Let me hit escape. May have to close 3-13. Do you want to save changes? Nope. Okay, let me try it again. Drag and drop. Okay, so I'm not able to drag and drop onto an open file. So this time it did work. But I had to close the first one, problem 3-13, in order to get it to work. All right, so let's continue on with the lecture. Okay, so later on I'm going to be showing you how to save as, once you complete your AutoCAD file. Okay, let's talk about layers. So we talked about the alphabet of lines earlier, object lines, center lines, hidden lines. So I've already set up your layers for now. So AutoCAD has what's called layers. Eventually, second half of the semester, you'll be setting up your own layers. So I'm going to set up my visible object lines. Okay, so these are the edges of the part. I chose white for the color. And for the thickness or line weight, I chose 0.50. You can make it 0.60 millimeters. Okay, and I'm going to use a continuous solid line for the visible lines. For the hidden lines or surfaces, so this is when we have to turn on our X-ray vision to see what's in the background or behind the wall, just like Superman, right? So I'm using the hidden layer. For the hidden lines, I chose red, and I chose dashed lines, broken lines, and the thickness I'm using is 0.35 millimeters or 0.30, that's line weight. And for our center lines, so anytime you see a hole, we're going to use center lines. That's the long dash, little dash, long dash, and so on. I chose green. The line type is center line, and I chose 0.30 millimeters for the thickness or line weight. Okay, so you can always make changes to your layers by clicking on this icon. And you can jump between layers by going to the drop down. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, so let me close this and open up the first one. Okay, so currently have my panels turned off, so let me just cycle through here and turn them back on. Okay, here they are. All right, so layers. Okay, so these are my layer properties. If I click on it, it'll take me to layers. Okay, so I've set up the layers for you. And by the way, I forgot to mention construction lines. So construction lines are temporary lines. So here what you see in magenta, go ahead and increase this. So I'm using magenta for construction lines or temporary lines. You can go with no thickness, or I chose 20, but I should just leave it at default at 0, but you'll still be able to see them. And I chose continuous solid lines, and that's what you see here in magenta. So these are guidelines. All right. Let me go ahead and turn off layer properties. And again, you'll be creating your own from scratch later on. Okay, if you want to jump between layers, this is how you do. You go to the drop down. Okay, to jump from one layer to another. If you're going to create center lines, you want to turn on the center lines layer, or I should say activate it. If you're going to create wide visible object lines, then activate this layer. Okay, or select this layer. Okay, so let's go back to the lecture. All right, so once again, we're going to use white, thickness of 0.60 or 0.50 for our visible object lines, right? And we're going to use magenta for construction lines. So construction lines are optional. Think of them as guidelines or like, for example, cheat sheets. So we're cheating to help us line up our views. Okay, so these are construction lines. Think of, for example, in construction, when you see a building coming up, especially a multi-story building, we see temporary scaffolding around the building while the construction is going on to help the builders, right, put the building together and be able to reach heights as you're building the second floor, third floor, and so on. So we use temporary scaffolding for the construction. Okay, so, and we also have the .3D XML file, right, that we can open in eDrawings. Okay, so this is problem 3-19, and I'm going to go ahead and open that one in a minute. And here's what's going to look like once it's complete. Okay, so I will send you the file and complete. Again, this is problem 3-19 from the back of chapter 3 in your textbook. Okay, so instead of hand sketching, we're doing it in AutoCAD. So I'll send you the incomplete 3D views. And once you complete it, it's going to look something like this, right? So once again, we're using green center lines to locate the centers of semicircles, full circles. This is also a semicircle, right? And we always want to extend construction lines beyond the arcs or circles. So for this arc, we want to extend beyond the arc. And for this circular hole, we want to extend the green center lines beyond the hole and also beyond the arc. Okay, so they happen to share the same center, the arc and the circle. So we extend beyond the arc. Okay, and this center line represents the axis of the hole. And you always extend beyond slightly. And then the hole, we're going to use red hidden lines because we can't see it from the front. So we're going to use red dashed lines for our hidden lines. That represents the diameter of the hole, right? Notice how it lines up with the left quadrant and right quadrant, and we're using the magenta construction lines to line up. All right, so, and once you save your file, keep the problem 3-19, P3-19, and add your initials or your name. So your first initial, so F for first initial, L for last initial. So in my case, it would be problem 3-19 JU for my initials. If you want to put your full name behind it, go for it. And that way you'll save it as a separate file from the incomplete one that I email you. So you can always have this as a backup if you have to start over again. All right, so once again, I'm going to show you how to cycle through the different layers. And you can also turn off layers. Okay, so if you want to turn off a layer, you can click a light bulb and it'll turn off that one layer. You can also freeze it. So not only will it hide it, it will also hide it from your computer so it doesn't slow down your computer if you're opening up a file with a larger data, especially in architecture. They have a lot of data. So this option not only will turn off the layer, but it will also hide it from your computer. So it eats up less memory and it doesn't slow down your computer. And you can also lock a layer. So if you're done creating all your visible object lines, you can lock it so you don't accidentally move something by mistake, right? All right, so let's go ahead and open up this problem, problem 3-19. All right, so let me close this file. You can have multiple files open. I'm not gonna save, I haven't made any changes, so no, I'm not gonna save it. So I'm gonna open up problem 3-19. Okay, so there it is, incomplete. So we're gonna create a few lines so I can get you guys started, and then I'll make separate videos for each problem. I'm just gonna walk you through AutoCAD a little bit, show you some of the commands so you can at least start feeling comfortable with it. And I will make an individual YouTube video for each problem so you can follow along step by step. I know this is overwhelming at first if this is the first time you're using AutoCAD. So if this is going over your head right now, don't worry, I will make step-by-step videos for each problem. All right, so now how do we move your drawing? If I want to move left and right, we can use the wheel. Okay, so using the wheel, you can hold on to the wheel so we can pan. Okay, so you can hold on to the wheel on the mouse or middle button. Hold it and you can pan, okay, left and right. So if I go to AutoCAD, okay, so I'm going to hold on to the wheel and I can pan. So you can see I can pan. Right, let's go back. You can also zoom using the wheel. So you can roll the wheel to zoom in and out. Okay, so I'm not gonna hold the wheel down, I'm just gonna roll the wheel. So I'm gonna roll the wheel. If I aim towards the upper left corner, it's gonna use that as my reference point when I zoom in and out, as you can see. So I'm rolling the wheel, I'm rolling the wheel. I pick this corner and roll the wheel. Again, don't press on the wheel, just roll it. Okay, so this is to zoom in and out. And finally, if you want to do a zoom fit, just double click on the wheel. Okay, so let's go back. So double click on the wheel to do a zoom fit. Okay, so double click, does a zoom fit. So if you happen to roll way out there and you lose your, so I'm rolling the wheel, and you lose your drawing, just double click on the wheel and it'll zoom fit. Okay, or sometimes you pan way off to the side and you lose your drawing and you start panicking thinking you lost everything. Just double click on the wheel and it'll do a zoom fit. All right. So let's say I was ready to create some lines. Okay, so if I was to open up this file, problem 319 in eDrawings, let's take a look at it. So I'm going to go to eDrawings. And I'm going to open up 319. Okay, so I'm going to go to File, Open, problem 319. There it is. And open. Okay, there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and, hey, I want to see the edges. So I want to see not only the colors, but the edges. Watch what happens in 3, 2, 1. See how it darkened the edges. You can also simply click wireframe. Okay. By the way, this line is just a tangent line. It's just going from a flat surface to a radius to a cylindrical surface. So this line actually doesn't exist. It's just letting us know that, hey, from here it's a flat surface, but here it's cylindrical. This happens to be a tangent line, which actually we cannot see, right? It just goes from a flat to a round. Just like a corner of a table, for example, you cannot see the tangent line. Same thing with this one. It's just the reason we see a line in here is just the way it generates the view. It actually generates it by creating a patch, and then it has to close it off. Same thing with this one. We don't see this tangent line. All right, so let's go back to colors with edges. All right. Okay, so here's our front view, as you can see, right? There's our front view. There's our top view. Okay, so we're missing this line here. Okay. I can rotate by simply I'm holding onto the wheel, and I'm going to slightly rotate it. So I'm holding onto the wheel to rotate it so you can see this purple surface. So I need to draw this visible object line that represents not only this edge, but the surface and this edge. Okay, so let me go back to top view. Okay, so let's practice some AutoCAD. Okay, and later in a later slide, in a few minutes, I'm going to go over some of the commands. But let's go ahead and start using the line command. Okay, so here's the line command. Make sure you are in the visible layer. So go to the drop down, go to visible layer. I'm going to click on line command. And we have a line missing here. I know it's there because here's the corner that it matches with, right? So I can cheat and say, hey, I want to make sure I draw that line in the correct spot. So I can cheat and simply go to this corner, click, and go straight up, and click, right? And once you're done, you can either hit escape on the keyboard. So if you go to your keyboard, the upper left button, the upper left key that says ESC, right, escape, you can simply escape. Okay, you can also right click and exit the command. I just use escape whether I'm using AutoCAD, SolidWorks, CATIA. It's just easier to go to escape. Okay, so there's the line. Now it's not supposed to extend into the front view. So now what I can do is click on it and use my grips to shorten it. So I'm using that blue grip to shorten it, and there it is. And I hit escape to deselect. Hit escape on the keyboard. Okay, so there's my first line. Okay, and I'll come back to these blue grips that you just saw in a later slide. Okay, if I'm ready to create center lines, right? If I'm ready to create center lines, I'll go to the center layer, go to the drop down center layer. I use the line command again. Okay, so I'm gonna aim towards the center, so I'm just hovering over the center. And notice it's recognizing the center of the circle, and then I slowly pull away horizontally and it's tracking. See how you see that little tiny white X? That lets me know it's tracking that center and it's staying horizontal as it's tracking. Let's go back. You have to pull away slowly for it to work. If you go too fast, it will not track. Okay, so I'm going to click out here and create my center line. And you always want to overextend when it comes to center lines. And click. Okay, I'm going to hit escape. Now I'm going to draw a vertical center line. And you can use your magenta construction lines, right, to guide you along. Use line command again. I'm going to hover over the center. So I'm just demonstrating how you're going to be completing your assignments in AutoCAD. Okay, click and go vertical. Notice how I'm free to move at different angles. I can turn on what's called the ortho. So if I go here down here to the status bar, if I'm just going to create horizontal and vertical lines, I can go down here to ortho mode. And I'll show you that in a later slide. Click on it. And now it only gives me, or it tries to force me to only create horizontal and vertical lines. You can also snap to a corner, right? As you can see. Okay, so it's not shaking because I'm old and I'm getting shaky. It's because I have ortho on, okay? And click. And I misclicked. See that? I was supposed to overextend. But that's okay. I'll come back and fix it. I'm going to hit escape. So this is common. You'll misclick as I just did. So I can click on the green line and use these blue grips. So I'm going to left mouse click and slightly extend. It doesn't want to extend. Now the reason it doesn't want to extend is because it tries to snap back to any corner or midpoint. So I'm going to have to temporarily turn off object snap. Okay, so if you're having trouble locating that endpoint slightly extended, it's not going to where you want it to go, then you can turn off object snap. And you can now freely extend it, as you can see. All right, let's draw one more center line. Okay, so now I'm trying to follow the center, but it's no longer working. So I got to turn on object snap back on. Object snap, turn it back on. And now I can follow the center. I can track. There it is. It's tracking. I can go beyond. But in this case, we only need to go beyond the little arc. Click. And let's see. It's trying to snap to this midpoint. When I see a triangle, it's a midpoint. When I see a green X, it's an intersection. It's trying to snap. Let me turn off object snap. Now I'm free to click wherever I want. Okay, and hit escape. All right. And let's throw in some hidden lines. We're not going to complete this. I'm just trying to show you how AutoCAD works, just to get you comfortable with it. Let's throw in some hidden lines. So we need to represent the hidden lines. So if you're standing in front of the object, right, if we go back to our e-drawings, so here's our top view. Let's go to the front view. If I go to front view, you will not be able to see the hole. We know the hole is there. Same thing with the scallop here on the right. Okay, so we're going to represent it with hidden lines. So again, we're going to use our X-ray vision to see the circle, the circular hole, and the scallop here on the side. Okay, so we're going to use hidden lines. Okay, so let's go back to AutoCAD. Okay, so let's draw some red hidden lines. Okay, so go to the hidden layer, use the line command. And I know it's supposed to line up with this quadrant. Let me turn on object snap again. And see, that's where I want to go off of, that left quadrant. So I can just track down, yep, and this is where it starts. So I can also use the magenta construction lines. That's where they are there. I created these magenta lines as guidelines, also so to guide you along for these first few assignments. Okay, and click, and there it is. Okay, hit escape, or else you'll continue creating lines. So these are my red hidden dash lines. Okay, so let's go back and create another red line. Okay, and from this quadrant, so anytime you see a diamond, that tells me it's picking the right quadrant of the circle or arc. Okay, and I'm going to track down, and here it is. And click, and hit escape when you're done. You can also right click to exit. All right, so now let's create an axis. So you do need an axis. So from this center, you need to draw a green center line to represent the axis of the hole. Okay, so let's go back to green center layer. Use the line command. Okay, so I know I have to follow the center of the circle above, right? And let's see, click. Okay, good. You don't want to overlap the two views. So I need to make sure there's a space there between the two green center lines. And click and hit escape. Okay, so you do not want to use one long green center line going from one view to another. It has to be two separate center lines. Okay, so that's one of the rules about creating your orthographic views. You cannot extend a green center line from one view to another just to go fast, right? Or to use less steps. Okay, so I'm not going to complete the 3 views, but let me show you how to save your work. Okay, so if you're ready to save this, let's say you got interrupted, you want to save your work and come back to this problem later on. Okay, so you can save. Now keep in mind, this is problem 3-19, as you can see up here, but I want to save it with the new name, right? With my initials. Okay, so you can either go save as from here, or you can click on the AutoCAD icon and go save as. Okay, so I'm going to leave the problem 3-19 portion of it, and I'm going to add my initials. If you want to put a space or a dash, as you can see, I already have from last semester or the previous semester, I already have one with, or a few with my initials. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a space or a dash so I don't overwrite my old files from last semester. And I'm going to type in JU for my initials. Okay, if you want to use your full name or your last name or first name initial, I'll leave it up to you. Okay, so I'm going to save it as a brand new file so I don't override over the original file, right, that I emailed you. I don't want to mess with that. I just want to save it as just in case I have to start over again from scratch. I can always go back to the original problem 3-13. Okay, now when I save it, I want you to look up here. See how currently we have problem 3-19 open, but we're going to give it a new name. It's going to add the initials. Watch what happens when I save this. Okay, and I'm going to hit save with my initials, save. And look at the top. Hey, there it is. So now this is our new file that we saved with our initials. Okay, so the original problem, sorry, I kept saying problem 3-13. This is problem 3-19. Okay, so the problem 3-19 that was emailed to you is still there in your folder. And now we have a second copy with your initials. Okay, so you can keep on going with the problems and keep saving your work. Okay, you can just keep saving it. All right, so now let me show you how to turn off layers. Okay, so we talked about turning off layers. So if we go back, so you can turn off layers. You can also thaw or freeze. So you can also hide it from the computer so it doesn't slow down your computer if you have a lot of data. The problems for our class are not that large in size, so it's not going to slow you down. But for architecture students, their files tend to be large. It will slow them down. So you can also thaw and freeze. And we can also lock them. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn off our construction lines. So let's say we're done with our drawing and we want to turn off these temporary construction lines. Okay, so let's say we're done. Obviously it's not done, but let's say we are. Once you finish a drawing, you should turn off your construction lines. If you don't turn them off, I'm not going to take any points off. But if you're at work, you don't want to turn in a drawing with the construction lines on to your boss, right? You want to turn them off. So I can go to the drop down and hit this light bulb. And in 3, 2, 1 for construction, and it just hides them. And you can see the light bulb went off. You can also freeze it, right? So it'll not only hide it from you, it'll also hide it from the computer, so it doesn't eat up a lot of memory. I never use this unless I'm dealing with a very large file. And you can also lock it. Okay, so I'm going to lock my visible object layer. Okay, I'm not going to turn it off. I turn it off if I want, right? I'm going to leave it on, but I'm going to lock it. Let's say my object lines are done, and I don't want to move something by mistake, so I can lock it. See the padlock? See how the object lines went gray? Okay, so if I try to delete it, so I can hit delete on the keyboard or I can hit erase, I can't do nothing to my object lines because they're locked. The layer's locked. I can delete my green center lines. I can move them. I can hide them, right? So I deleted my center line. I can always hit undo. Let me hit escape to make sure I'm out of any command or deselecting everything that I probably would have selected. Okay, so I can still make changes to the green center line, as you can see, right? Because it's not locked. Okay, so let me hit undo. Okay, so if I wanted to lock my green center line or green center layer, I can go ahead and use the padlock and see how it darkens to let me know it's locked. So now if I go back, I cannot do anything to the green center line. It will not let me delete it or alter it in any way. All right, so let me go back and unlock them, and you'll see the color or the brightness of the color come back to the visible layer and the green center layer. All right. Now, if I wanted to change line thicknesses, and later on I'll walk you through this step by step when you start creating your own layers, you can always change the line thicknesses. So if I wanted to make the object lines thicker, I can go here to the visible layer, go to the line weight, and I can make them thicker. So I'm just going to exaggerate and say, hey, instead of 0.50, I want to go 1 millimeter. And okay. And see how they're a lot thicker now? See how thick the lines are? Some of you are saying, hey, teacher, I don't see it on my computer. I don't see any line thicknesses. I can see the thin lines, but my object lines are thin. It doesn't show that it got thicker in line weight. So most likely you have your line weight turned off. The show line weight, so I can turn them off, as you can see. Turn it back on. All right, so let's go ahead and move on with the lecture. Okay, so we've been looking at the status bar, right? Where we're talking about object snap, and we were talking about ortho, and so on. Okay, so on the bottom right of AutoCAD, we have, down here on the bottom right, this is our status bar. So it has a bunch of icons. So these are options that we can turn on and off. Anytime you see blue, it's on. If you click on it, it will turn it off and it'll turn gray. Blue is on, okay? So this is the status bar. If you don't see line weight, for example, hey teacher, I don't see line weight. I don't see the line weight icon. Then all you have to simply do is go to the very end of the status bar, click on the very last icon, click on it, and it's only showing the ones with the check mark on, right? So if you go to line weight and you don't see a check mark next to line weight, click on line weight and it'll add the check mark and it'll load the icon into the status bar. Okay, another thing that you may not see in the status bar is polar tracking. Okay, so polar tracking, let me turn it off. And you'll see when I turn it on, it'll load it here, polar tracking. Okay, so polar tracking will allow us to track at different angles, and I'll talk more about that later on. The one that I do want you to turn off for now is dynamic input. I think most likely yours will default to on. Dynamic input, you can type in measurements and angles on the fly as you're creating geometry. If you're already using dynamic input, it's okay if you're comfortable with it. If you're not, you may want to turn it off. Okay, so dynamic input, if your icon is not on, let me go ahead and turn it off. And you see it disappeared here from the status bar. It's going to load it when I click it back on. So if your dynamic input icon is not loaded into the status bar, click on it. And there's dynamic input loaded. Okay, so mine is currently off. It's grayed out. If I turn it on, watch what happens when I try and create a line. Okay, so see, I can type in lengths. I can type in angles, right? So I can type in coordinates. I can just simply click and see how it's waiting for me to type in a length or an angle. You can type in a length. Let's say I wanted to go length of 1 unit. And then I can hit tab and then I can change the angle. It's waiting for me to type in an angle. Let's say I type in 45 degrees and tab. There it is. So this is dynamic input. So I recommend that you turn it off for now if you're not comfortable with it. If you want to leave it on, go for it. Later on, I will walk you through some commands where you are going to have to turn it off. But you're more than welcome to leave it on if you're comfortable with it. Okay, so I can hit enter to continue on creating lines, or I can hit escape. Let me go ahead and delete this line. Okay, to delete, you select the item. You can select more than one. If you want to delete more than one item, you can select them. As you can see, they're highlighted, letting me know they're selected. You can hit the delete button on your keyboard, or you can use the number 2 eraser to delete them. Okay. All right, so let's go back to status bar. Okay, so we just turned off dynamic input. Or actually, I just turned mine on. Okay, so if it's gray, it's off. If it's blue, it's on. Okay, so we talked about ortho, right? Ortho is if you're only going to create horizontal and vertical lines, you want to have ortho on. If you want to be able to snap to corners, centers, quadrants, you want to turn on object snap. And it's one of those options that you're going to be turning on and off. And for line weight, if you want to see the line weight, turn this on. And I'll come back to some of the other ones. For now, I just want to focus on the ones that we're going to use quite a bit. I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information in this video. Okay, if you're using an older version of AutoCAD, this is what the status bar looks like. Things are a little different. For example, the line weight. If you want to change the line weight, this is what the icon looks like. So you can see the thickness of the lines. This is an old version of AutoCAD versus a newer version where the line weight option looks like a equalizer display on a radio, for example, right? Okay. Okay, so this is what the old school AutoCAD looks like. Okay, so once again, I mentioned object snap. So let's go back and cover object snap one more time. So object snap allows you to snap to corners, centers, midpoints, quadrants. Okay, so let's take a look at object snap. Let's practice object snap. And I'll be going over this again in our YouTube videos for this chapter. Okay, so I'm going to go back to AutoCAD. So let me turn on my construction layer, turn it on. Turn it back on. There it is. All right. So I'm going to zoom in using the wheel. I can choose roll. Okay. So remember in the front view, we're not able to see the hole nor this scallop, right? Or this partial slot. So I need to represent it here in the front view. Okay. So I'm going to use line command to create a center line. So we do have a center point here, right? So we need to create a center line representing the axis of this partial circular hole. All right, so make sure you are in center layer. Okay, so I'm going to use line command. And see how I can see that green X? Okay, so that's because object snap is on. If I turn off object snap, I can no longer... I'm in the middle of the command, so let me hit escape. I'm going to escape this command. Okay, so object snap is off. There it is, it's off. So let me use line command again for the center line. And as you can see, I can no longer snap. Okay, let me turn off dynamic input. Okay, so it just cleans it up a little bit, the cursor. All right, so if I'm going to create the center line, and you have to make sure it lines up with the top view. Everything has to line up. Okay, so I'm going to turn on object snap, turn it back on. So now when I use the line command, see how it snaps? The green X is intersection. A circle is center point. A square is an endpoint. Okay, if you want a midpoint, if I want the midpoint, let's say the midpoint of this line, it's a triangle. If you don't see some of these shapes, hey, I don't see midpoint. Okay, so this is the midpoint of this line. So what you do is you right click on object snap, right click, and the ones with the check marks are the ones that are turned on. You don't want to turn all of them on. Okay, so it'll get busy on the screen. It'll look too crowded with all these. It's going to try to snap to everything when you're creating new geometry. Okay, so definitely have endpoint on, midpoint, center of an arc or circle, quadrants, so those are the four corners of the circle, right? Intersection, okay, extension, and I typically leave the others off. Okay, you can always turn the others on when you need them. Just simply right click on Object Snap. All right, so let's go to, once again, line command, and now I can track the snaps, as you can see. Okay, and there's my center line. Hit escape to exit. And I'm going to use a red hidden line. Okay, so I go to hidden layer. So from this quadrant point, I'm going to go straight down to represent the depth of that partial slot, okay, into the front view, okay, or represented in the front view. So line again. And I go snap to snap, right? And then I hit escape to exit. All right, so the reason we don't extend the red hidden lines like we do with the green center lines, let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit, roll the wheel. I'm gonna hold on to the wheel to pan. Okay, let me turn off my construction layer for now. Okay, so center lines are imaginary, right? They don't exist. It's important for dimensioning and also important for machining. We need to know where the axes of the holes are at or the center lines. The center point of a hole. Okay, so we slightly extend them, and if we were to print this in black and white, we can distinguish a hidden line from a center line. So we do not extend hidden lines. We only extend the green center lines, and that's so we don't mix these up. Especially if you were to print this in black and white, you don't get these mixed up. Anytime you see a line overextended, oh, okay, that's a center line. Hey, that's a center line. Oh, this is not a center line. This is a hidden line. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the lecture. Okay, and then ortho mode, right? So ortho. So this is to create vertical and horizontal lines. Okay, so if I go back. Okay, so I deleted my center line here, or vertical center mark. Let me go ahead and bring it back in. Okay, so let's go to center layer, use the line command. All right, so you can see I have object snap on and I have ortho mode on, right? So I can track the center, go slightly beyond, click. Now notice how as I move the cursor left, down, right, etc., it's only trying to create a horizontal or vertical line. If I did not want to create a vertical or horizontal, I can turn off ortho. See, as you can see, if I wanted to go at a different angle from horizontal or vertical, you can turn it off. But if you know you're going to create a vertical or horizontal line, then turn it back on. So now it's forcing me to go vertical or horizontal, as you can see. But it's still going to try and snap. Okay, so it will allow you to snap. Okay, so be aware of that. So it's two options that are fighting each other. You have ortho and snap fighting each other, and that's why the line is disappearing and reappearing. Okay. Okay, and click and hit escape. All right, so that is ortho mode. By the way, if you were to create a center line, let me turn off ortho temporarily. If your center line looks like this, that is incorrect, right? It's supposed to be vertical. So if you drew your center line like that, that tells me, oh, this student forgot to turn on ortho and created a vertical line that's skewed. It's not a vertical line. So this is incorrect. So you would have to go back and fix it. I will take points off if your lines are not vertical or horizontal as they're supposed to be, right? So you would have to fix this. Okay, so I'm going to use the grip. To try and make it vertical, I'm going to have to recreate it. Let me go ortho. So I'm having trouble recreating the vertical line. Okay, so I'll just have to recreate it over again. Hit escape. I can delete this. I'll just recreate it. If you have trouble like I just did, just start over, right? Recreate it again. So now I do have ortho on, so it's not going to create a crooked line. Okay, hit escape. All right, let's go back. Okay, we talked about line weight already. Okay, so this is the icon for line weight. If you want to see the thickness of the line, turn it on. I prefer to leave it on. Some of you may want to turn it off. Okay, we also have grid snap. Okay, so as you're creating lines or any geometry, it's going to want to snap to the grid. So we do have a grid. You can also change the spacing of the grid. I'll teach you how to do that on a later video. Okay, so my grid is currently off. As you can see, if I turn it on, so if I was to create a new line, I want you to notice that now the cursor is snapping to this grid. It's hard to see, but there is a grid on the background. Okay, so there is a grid, as you can see. So this might get annoying, or some of you may want to use grids if you're using if you're creating lines using whole numbers, for example. So if all your dimensions are in whole numbers, like let's say inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, no decimal points, then you may want to turn on your grid. You can also alter your grid. Okay, you can right click on it and change your snap settings if you want to change the size of your grid. Okay, you can also turn it off. I prefer to have it off, the snap. You can also turn off the grid in the background. As you can see, it's off. Maybe a little hard to see. Turn it on, off. I prefer to leave the grid in the background on, but I don't want to snap. So I don't want to have this snapping turned on, as you can see. Okay, I turn off the snap. And also, by the way, this green line and this red line represent the axes. Okay, so this is your vertical axis, or the Y. Okay, this is the Y axis, and this is the X axis, the horizontal, and this is the origin. Okay, so this is 0, 0. Okay, so 0 for your X, 0 for your Y coordinate. And as you can see down here on the bottom left, as I move the cursor, it's telling me where I'm located with respect to the origin. The closer I get to the origin, you can see it go to 0. Okay, close to 0. If I turn on snap, right, you can see whole numbers, right? So in this case, it's whole numbers for my grid. If I go to the origin, that's 0, 0, 0. Now there is a Z-axis. So we do have a Z-axis that's normal to the surface. That's why it's showing me X, Y, Z coordinates here on the status bar. Okay, so the first one is my X, my Y, and Z is normal to the surface. Later on, I will show you the Z-axis and 3D modeling. It's not part of this class, but at the end of the semester, I will show you how to do some quick models, 3D modeling in AutoCAD. But we don't cover it in this class, but I will demo it. Okay, now if you don't see your XYZ coordinates, go at the end of the status bar and turn on the coordinates. So if yours doesn't have a check mark, click on coordinates, it'll add the check mark and load your XYZ coordinates onto the status bar. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so our drawings that we're going to create in this class will be in millimeters or inches. 99% of mechanical drawings are in millimeters or in inches, right? If you're in architecture, most likely you're in inches. Back in the good old days, it would use feet, inches, right? Okay, so for AutoCAD, it doesn't care about units. If you're using millimeters or inches, it just think of units, or I should say unitless, right? It doesn't see millimeters, it doesn't see inches. It just sees measurements with no units, okay? Now let's talk about line type scale, LT scale. So as you're creating your geometry, you're going to say, hey, teacher, I don't see the dash lines for the red hidden lines. Okay, so let me turn off object snap. It's getting annoying here. All right, so these are hidden lines. The red hidden lines represent, let me hit escape. So the red hidden lines represent the hole, right? Going through the whole part. Okay, so the red hidden lines, that's the diameter of the hole, right? And it lines up with the hole. So if you don't see the dash lines, you're going to type in line type scale in the command line. Okay, so the command line. Okay, so down here on the bottom, we have the command line. You can type in LTS, LTS scale, or the whole term line type scale. So you can see the dashes. Also, you can, in the command line, you can type in commands. So instead of clicking line command, you can type in line. So you don't have to be clicking on the icon. You can also type in L, enter, and it knows that you're using the line command. Okay, so let's practice LTS scale. Let's go back. Okay, once you complete your drawing, wait till the very end to complete your drawing. Okay, wait till the end to change your line type scale. So it'll change the spacing between the gaps on your center lines and your red hidden lines. So I'm going to go here in the command line, click inside. Okay, it's waiting for me to type something in. So I'm going to type in LT scale or just LT. And you can see it's already giving me an option. Oh, you want LT scale, right? I can type in LTS, enter, or I can select from here, right? LT scale. Or we can type in LTS and enter. Okay, so pick it. So hey, it's telling me, hey, you want to change your LTS. Usually it defaults to 1. For this file that I'm sending you, I changed it to a scale of 0.1. Okay, so when you change the scale, I'm just going to move the decimal over. So instead of 0.100, I'm going to type in 1 and see what I get. And I'm going to hit enter and 3, 2, 1. Enter. And did you see what happened to the scale, right? You blinked, right? So rewind the video so you can see that it did change the scale, right? It's like, that's too much. Let me go back to LTS. Enter. Okay, now 1 seemed to work. If for some reason you still don't see gaps between the dashes, try 10. That doesn't work, try 100 for your LT scale. If that doesn't work, go the other way. Try 0.1, try 0.01, try 0.001 until you guesstimate a good LTS. So instead of 1, I'm going to use 0.5 this time. Okay, 3, 2, 1, don't blink. I enter, and hey, that looks a lot cleaner. Okay, so don't do LTS towards the very end. Once you complete your drawing, then play around with the LTS. If I don't see the dashes when I grade your work, it's okay. I'm not going to take points off. As long as the red hidden line is in the right layer, I'm okay with it. I don't want you to get frustrated trying to show the gaps between the dashes. All right, so let's go back. So we have LTS. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so once again, if you want to change your line type scale, use LTS. And that's one of the most, that's the question I get the most from my students. Teacher, what's that command again to be able to change the spacing between the dash lines? And it's LTS. And the next class session, teacher, what's that? It's LTS, line type scale. So when you think of LTS, think of LTS. Not as easy as 1, 2, 3. LTS. Don't you mess with me, right? LTS. Not as easy as 1, 2, 3. Okay, so LTS. Okay, and play around with different scales. Try 100, try 10. If you still don't see the gaps, go the other way, 0.1, 0.01, and so on. All right, so, and we also already talked about tracking. Okay, anytime you see a little white X, that means it's tracking existing geometry. When you track, if you're creating a circle, for example, let's say you wanted to put a circle over here, but you want it to be at the same horizontal location as its endpoint, hover over it, and then slowly track away, and you'll see the little white X letting you know it's tracking this existing geometry. All right, so we're not going to go over all these commands today in this video. It's just way too much So we're going to go over the first few commands for this chapter. We're going to do line command, and we're going to do circle command and arc in one of our later videos for your assignment. Okay, but if you want to start playing with some of these commands, you can either click on the command, for example, line command, or you can type in L into the command line and it knows that you're using line command. Okay, if you want to create a circle, you can click on the circle icon, or in the command line, type in circle or C, right? So for example, if I go to AutoCAD, let's say I wanted to create a circle, I can either click on the circle command, or I can, in the command line, type in circle or C. Okay, so it already knows, as you can see on the right here. So C is for circle. I can hit enter, and now it's waiting for me to create a circle. And there's my circle. Let's say I wanted this circle in the object layer. Let's say I made a mistake and this goes in the object, the white object line layer. If you want to move it to a different layer, click on it. You can click more than one object and say, hey, I want to move it over to the visible layer, right? As you can see, it's giving me a preview as I shuffle down the layers. Go to visible, and there it is. Hit escape to deselect. Okay, so you can always move things from one layer to another. All right. And again, we'll go over some of these commands in the next lecture. Okay, and some of the more advanced commands we'll cover them in chapter 3, part 2, which will be later on. Okay, so we've covered snap. Right, so if you have object snap turned on, you can snap to an endpoint, a midpoint, an intersection, quadrants of the circle, the corners of the circle, right? Or the extreme points in the horizontal and the vertical. And anytime you see a little green circle, that's the center of the arc or circle, okay? And once again, you can always right-click on the icon to turn on the other options. I suggest that you don't turn them on, or else you'll be going crazy. Anytime you create new geometry, it's going to try and snap to anything and everything. Okay, so I recommend that you don't turn all these on. If you need to do a nearest or tangent, then turn it on momentarily, and then you can turn it, and you can then deactivate it later. Okay, grips. So these blue grips allow you to move the geometry or change the size, okay, or extend an endpoint. So let's go ahead and practice grips. Okay, so I've made my grips larger and also my object snaps. On yours are going to be tiny. So I make them larger. I go to my settings and change them. Okay, so if I click on the circle, you'll see the blue grips, right? And I can use the blue grips to make changes. And if you were curious, how did I change the size of my grips? You can always go to the AutoCAD icon, and you can go to options. Okay, I suggest you leave them alone, but if you want to change the size of your grips, let's see, I forget which tab it's in, so I'm just going to shuffle through these tabs. Okay, for your object snaps, right? Midpoint, endpoint, quadrants. You can increase the size also, as you can see, right? You can increase it, decrease it, as you can see. For your cursor, make it larger or smaller. I make it larger just to lecture. Okay, let's go on to the next tab. Selection. Okay, here are the blue grips. I can make them larger. As you can see, yours are going to be very tiny if you're using the default settings. I suggest you leave them alone, but if you need to increase them, maybe you're having trouble seeing them. Okay, so go to the selection tab and increase it and hit OK. Once you've selected your settings or change your settings, hit OK. I'm not going to hit OK. I'm just going to cancel out of this. I don't want to change them for mine, so I'll cancel. All right, so grips. So if I click on the circle, if I wanted to change the diameter, I can simply left mouse click and let go, and I can increase the diameter, so you can see. If I wanted to move it, if I want to move the circle, click at its center grip, and you can move it. Notice how I have ortho on right now, so it's only allowing me to go vertical or horizontal. If I turn off ortho, now I can go at a different angle, as you can see. Let's make it smaller. Okay, same thing with the line. I'm going to click on this line. I can use the middle grip to move it. As you can see, I can use the end grip to stretch it. So I left mouse click, and once I know the length, click. Okay, so notice how the grips turn red to let you know, hey, we just went from cold to hot, right? It's like a danger, you're going to change it, right? Okay, so you can extend or you can shorten and so on. Okay, you can also change the angle, right? You're going to hit escape to exit. And you can always hit undo to go back to where you were. I'm going to hit undo. Okay, back to where it was. All right. Okay, so those are grips. Okay, we are going to be talking about auxiliary views. So these are views that are not horizontal, not vertical. So I will go in detail on auxiliary views in our second video for this chapter. Okay, so we're going to save this for the next class session, but just to introduce it to you, a brief introduction. These are auxiliary views. So it's not projected horizontally or vertically. They're projected at an angle. And the reason is to look down the hole, and it's also easier to measure. Okay, so if I show you the next one. Okay, so here we have our traditional front view, top view, side view, also known as orthographic projections. Ortho, right? Ortho meaning horizontal or vertical. Okay, if you have to create an auxiliary view at an angle, so if you need to look down the hole, for example, like in a chemistry class, when you're looking down the microscope, you're going to angle your view, right? You're going to tilt your head slightly down so you can look down the microscope. Same idea. Okay, so let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so if you're looking down the microscope, you'll be able to look down the axis of the hole, and you're going to now project parallel to the center line of the hole, or the axis of the hole, and this is now called an auxiliary view. Okay, so the right side is an ortho view, the top view is an ortho view. This is an auxiliary view because we didn't create it based on a projection that's horizontal or vertical. Okay, so we're going to cover this in part 2 of this chapter. And also in part 2, I'm going to show you how to use these two commands, lengthen and align, to help us cheat to create our auxiliary view. So we're going to use the other existing views to cheat to help us create our difficult auxiliary view. Okay. Again, we'll come back to this in part 2. Also, in part 2, we're going to be discussing coordinate systems. So sometimes you need to create your own coordinate system. Okay, so over here, once again, on the bottom left, where you see the red line and green line intersect, this is our world coordinate system. This is our 0, 0, 0, right? Our 0, 0, 0, our origin. You can create an axis at a different location. So let's say I needed to work on this view, and I needed to go off of this origin. Then I would place an axis here, and that's called a user coordinate system. And as I mentioned before, maybe I didn't mention it in a previous video, but if you're working on an aircraft, for example, if you're working on the fuselage, typically the world coordinate system or the universal coordinate system is towards the front of the fuselage. It may be at the nose of the fuselage, or the front towards the landing gear, or it may even be at the firewall that separates the engine bay from the cockpit. Okay, so depending on the program and the company, they like to place their world coordinate system or universal coordinate system at different locations. And if you were working on the wing of the aircraft, it's better to create your own coordinate system, your own user coordinate system. Okay, so we'll talk more about that in part 2. Okay, so this will walk you through how to create your own user coordinate system. Currently, we're using the World Coordinate System, WCS. Okay, so to end the lecture, I'm going to show you an example. As you can see, let's say this is your assignment for, actually I got this mislabeled, problem 2-9. I think this is problem 3. So this is from the old textbook. Chapter 3 used to be chapter 2, so that's why this is mislabeled. I believe this is problem 3-21. All right, so if you were to email me your file, so let's say you finished your AutoCAD file, right? Once again, you saved it with your initials, right? You can see up here it has the initials. Once you save it, you're going to email me your file. You're going to attach it to an email, right? You're going to email it to me, attach it, and I'm going to open it up. So I'm going to download your file, open it on my computer, and I'm going to take a screenshot, and then I'm going to place it on a PowerPoint presentation. And I'm going to point out your mistakes. Okay, so let's say this is your drawing, you submitted your drawing, and I'm going to point out any mistakes that you probably made. So here, the student forgot the center line, forgot the red hidden line, and green center line to represent this scallop or partial slot. Okay, so I'll point out the mistakes. Hey, you forgot some lines here. Okay. You're going to get a 4 out of 5 for this assignment. Okay, so I'll save this PowerPoint, convert it to a PDF file, and email it back to you. Okay, so I'll email you your grade back so you can see your score. Oh, I got a 4 out of 5. If you're happy with 4 out of 5, don't worry about it. But if you want to go for the perfect score, then go ahead and fix your mistakes, save your AutoCAD file, and email it back to me. Okay, with your corrections, so you can go for that perfect score, 5 out of 5. All right, so once again, don't forget to save your work and add your initials or your name to it. And I know this is a little bit overwhelming when you're first learning AutoCAD, but I will make YouTube videos for each individual problem on this handout. Okay, see you in the next video.